you join me in the greeting? God is light, in whom there is no darkness at all. Jesus Christ is the light of the world. And this is the judgment, that the light has come into the world, and we love darkness rather than light. It was the darkest day, the unbearable day. Many who had followed Jesus up to now fled from the events of Friday, and those who stayed to watch wept in horror. The rigged trial, the mob that howled for the blood of the man who had failed to meet their patriotic expectations. The brutal beating, the savagery of the soldiers, the stumbling walk through the city he entered to cheers 5 days before. Finally, the nails pounded into flesh, the tortured body jerked upright, the naked man dying by inches as his enemies jeered. To have it end like this, after all the bright promise. It was not just the cruel death of the disciples' young leader, but the death of their faith. The end of all they believed in on this Black Friday that seemed anything but good.
Then, accompanied by the disciples, Jesus left the upstairs room and went as usual to the Mount of Olives. There he told them, "Pray that you will not give in to temptation." He walked away about a stone's throw and knelt and prayed, "Father, if you are willing, please take this cup of suffering from me. Yet I want your will to be done, not mine." Then an angel from heaven appeared and strengthened him. He prayed more fervently, and he was in such agony of spirit that his sweat fell to the ground like drops of blood.
And even as Jesus said this, Judas, one of the 12 disciples, arrived with a crowd of men armed with swords and clubs. They had been sent by the leaders of the people, the priests and elders. The traitor, Judas, had given them a prearranged signal. "You will know which one to arrest when I greet him with a kiss." So Judas came straight to Jesus. "Greetings, Rabbi," he exclaimed, and gave him the kiss. Jesus said, "My friend, go ahead and do what you came for." Then the others grabbed Jesus and arrested him. But one of the men with Jesus pulled out his sword and struck the high priest's slave, slashing off his ear. "Put away your sword," Jesus told him. "Those who use the sword will die by the sword. Don't you realize that I could ask my Father for thousands of angels to protect us, and he would send them instantly? But if I did, How would the scriptures be fulfilled that describe what must happen now? Then Jesus said to the crowd, "Am I some dangerous revolutionary that you come with swords and clubs to arrest me? Why didn't you arrest me in the temple? I was teaching there every day. But this is all happening to fulfill the words of the prophets as recorded in the scriptures." At that point, all the disciples deserted him and fled.
Jesus was silent and made no reply. Then the high priest asked him, "Are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One?" Jesus said, "I am. And you will see the Son of Man seated in the place of power at God's right hand, and coming on the clouds of heaven." Then the high priest tore his clothing to show his horror and said, Why do we need other witnesses? You have all heard his blasphemy. What is your verdict?" "Guilty," they all cried. "He deserves to die."
Then Pilate went back into his headquarters, and he called for Jesus to be brought to him. "Are you the king of the Jews?" he asked him. Jesus replied, "Is this your own question, or did others tell you about me?" "Am I a Jew?" Pilate retorted. "Your own people and their leading priest brought you to me for trial. Why? What have you done?" Jesus answered, "My kingdom is not an earthly kingdom. If it were, my followers would fight to keep me from being handed over to the Jewish leaders. But my kingdom is not of this world." Pilate said, "So you are a king?" Jesus responded, "You say I'm a king. Actually, I was born and came into the world to testify to the truth. All who love the truth recognize that what I say is true."
Now, it was the governor's custom each year during Passover celebration to release one prisoner, anyone the people requested. One of the prisoners at that time was Barnabas, a revolutionary who had committed murder in an uprising. The crowd went to Pilate and asked him to release a prisoner as usual. "Would you like me to release to you this King of the Jews?" Pilate asked. For he reasoned by now that the leading priest had arrested Jesus out of envy. But at this point, the leading priest stirred up the crowd to demand the release of Barabbas, instead of Jesus. Pilate asked them, "Then what should I do with this man you call the King of the Jews?" They shouted back, "Crucify him." "Why?" Pilate demanded. "What crime has he committed?" But the mob roared even louder, "Crucify him!" So to pacify the crowd, Pilate released Barabbas to them. He ordered Jesus flogged with a lead-tipped whip, then turned him over to the Roman soldiers to be crucified.
When Jesus came out wearing a crown of thorns and the purple robe, Pilate said to them, "Here is the man."
The Father loves me because I sacrifice my life so I may take it back again. No one can take my life from me. I sacrifice it voluntarily. For I have the authority to lay it down when I want to, and also to take it up again. For this is what my Father has commanded.
As they led Jesus away, Simon of Cyrene was coming in from the country. He was forced to follow Jesus and carry his cross.
A large crowd trailed behind, including many grief-stricken women. But Jesus turned to them and said, "Daughters of Jerusalem, don't weep for me, but weep for yourselves and for your children. For the days are coming when they will say, 'Fortunate indeed are all the women who are childless, the wombs that have not borne a child, and the breasts that have never nursed.' People will beg the mountains, 'Fall on us,' and plead with the hills, 'Bury us.' For if these things are done when the tree is green, what will happen when it is dry?"
When they came to a place called the Skull, they nailed him to the cross. And the criminals were also crucified, one on his right and one on his left. Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they are doing." And the soldiers gambled for his clothes by throwing dice.
one of the criminals hanging beside him scoffed. So you're the Messiah, are you? Prove it by saving yourself, and us too while you're at it. But the other criminal protested, Don't you fear God, even when you've been sentenced to die? We deserve to die for our crimes, but this man hasn't done anything wrong. Then he said, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And Jesus replied, I assure you, today you will be with me in paradise.
Standing near the cross was Jesus' mother and his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. When Jesus saw his mother standing there beside the disciple he loved, he said to her, Dear woman, here is your son. And he said to this disciple, Here is your mother. And from then on, this disciple took her into his home.
Jesus knew that his mission was now finished, and to fulfill Scripture, he said, I am thirsty. A jar of sour wine was sitting there, so they soaked a sponge in it, put it on a hyssop branch, and held it up to his lips. When Jesus had tasted it, he said, It is finished. Then he bowed his head and released his spirit. It was the day of preparation, and the Jewish leaders did not want the bodies hanging there the next day, which was the Sabbath, and a very special Sabbath, because it was the Passover. So they asked Pilate to hasten their deaths by ordering that their legs be broken. Then their bodies could be taken down. So the soldiers came and broke the legs of the two men crucified with Jesus. But when they came to Jesus, they saw that he was already dead, so they did not break his legs. One of the soldiers, however, pierced his side with a spear, and immediately blood and water flowed out.
afterward, Joseph of Arimathea, who had been a secret disciple of Jesus because he feared the Jewish leadership, asked Pilate for permission to take down Jesus' body. When Pilate gave permission, Joseph came and took the body away. With him came Nicodemus, the man who had come to Jesus at night. He brought about 75 pounds of perfumed ointment made from myrrh and aloes. Following Jewish burial custom, they wrapped Jesus' body with the spices in a long sheet of linen cloth. The place of crucifixion was near a garden, where there was a new tomb never used before. And so, because it was the day of preparation for the Jewish Passover, and since the tomb was close at hand, they laid Jesus there.
One night as I lay on my pillow, while asleep in a dream I did go to the place where they crucified Jesus on that old rugged cross, cruel and cold. There the greatest love story was written. Visualize with me if you will our Savior on that April morning as he carried the cross up the hill. And I saw those nails, those old rusty nails, and the crown made of thorns that he wore. So sad was the scene that I cried in my dream, so great was the pain that he bore. They scorned and they mocked, and he drank the bitter cup as he hung there with two common thieves. For he had to fulfill his Father's own will, and I was right there in a dream. As I stood there on top of Mount Calvary, in his pain I could hear his sad cry. From the 6th hour to 9 there was darkness in my dream, oh so helpless was I. I thank him for that day on the mountain, the price price that he paid was supreme. In my heart I will carry a picture of what I saw there in the dream. And I saw those nails, those old rusty nails, and the crown made of thorns that he wore. So sad was the scene that I cried in my dream. So great was the pain that he bore. They scorned and they mocked, and he drank the bitter cup as he hung there with two common thieves. For he had to fulfill his Father's own will. I was right there in a dream. For he had to fulfill his Father's own will, and I was right there in a dream. Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Were you there when they nailed him to that tree? Were you there when they nailed him to that tree? Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they nailed him to that tree? Were you there when they pierced him in the side? Were you there when they pierced him in the side? Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they pierced him in the side? Were you there when the sun refused to shine? Were you there when the sun refused to shine? Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when the sun refused to shine? Were you there when they laid him in the tomb? Were you there when they laid him in the tomb? Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they laid him in the tomb.
Brothers and sisters, most of us have experienced this Friday for ourselves. It's not the disillusionment of Thursday when our own performance falls short. It's the blow that strikes from outside, the tragedy that destroys our loved one, our health, our livelihood. We feel as the disciples did on that terrible day that Jesus himself has failed us. If he were really God's Son, things like this could not happen. Are you not the Christ? Save yourself and us. There is no way around the Fridays of our lives, only the way through pain and death and burial. As his sorrowing followers laid Jesus in the tomb, so we lay down the wreckage of our hope. Ahead was Easter Sunday, but on Friday they couldn't know that. And neither can we in the first shock of loss. We can only know that we will know. We can only know that the whole story is not yet told. For of course, Jesus is the Christ. He is saving us, whatever the appearance. He is bringing about our everlasting joy in a way only God could have chosen. If it is Friday in your life today, Easter cannot be far away. Brothers and sisters, this evening, in the close of our time together, you are invited to come and have time at the altar railing to have prayer on this Good Friday. And we only ask that after you have had your time of prayer at the altar railing or seated, that you just leave the sanctuary in silence.